Hello and welcome to Relationship Advice. My name is Lauren. I am joined by my friends and co-hosts Coulter and Kayla. We are three licensed professional counselors who love to chat about all things relationships. And today we're coming at you from a different angle than usual. I'm so excited for this conversation as we welcome special guest Bridget Todd to chat with us about AI and relationships. I'm going to dive us right in introducing Bridget. Bridget is an award-winning creator, tech journalist, and host of the podcast There Are No Girls on the Internet and IRL, AI in Real Life, which explore the intersection of technology, culture, identity, the ethical impact of artificial intelligence. In her forthcoming original audiobook, Love at First Prompt, she explores the rapidly growing world of human AI relationships, from friendships and romance to therapy and emotional support, and what happens when artificial intelligence becomes one of our most intimate companions. So, Bridget, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where are you coming from today?
I'm coming from muggy, hot Washington, D.C., our nation's capital.
Okay, it's hot here. It's not as muggy, but I guess I'm the only one right now here in Phoenix, Arizona.
So you know heat.
I know heat. It's real hot out right now.
We know heat.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Coulter, you're out of town right now. You're normally here with me.
Yeah, I'm in Truckee, California, which is right outside of Tahoe, and it is
Fun.
79 degrees today, and it's 113 back home.
It's miserable. Yes, and I'm in Reno, Nevada, which it's a little bit warm here. It's like 90 degrees today, but nothing like Phoenix and probably nothing like Washington, D.C. So we have empathy for you, Bridget, in that humidity.
Yeah. Well, my goodness. So we talk so much on this show about how to be in relationship well with ourselves and then in turn to be able to show up in relationship well with others. We have some really cool experiential practices where people can join us on a platform called Relationship Academy to actually ask questions of us and of each other about how they're practicing showing up in relationships in the real world. But in contrast to the real world, we are going to be chatting today about the artificial world, the artificial intelligence. And I know that Coulter and Kayla and I have all been seeing a significant increase in people coming into therapy, talking about how they're using AI to help them practice therapy, to script emails, to script ways that they want to have conversations with their family and partners. So I'm really, really fascinated because this is not our area of expertise to learn a little bit more from you, Bridget.
Yeah, I'm actually really pleased with how you framed that because from doing the reporting for my book, Love at First Prompt, I was surprised about all the instances in which humans are using technology like AI to bring them in deeper connection with the other humans in their life. So much of the conversation is, are people using AI to replace humans? There are some people who are interested in that, but the overwhelming majority, they're not looking for AI to replace the human relationships that they have. And in fact, they're looking for AI to help them deepen the relationships that they have with other humans.
That's encouraging. That's fascinating. Is that, I guess I'm curious, like, how do we know that? Where are we seeing that?
Yeah. So in the book, one of the examples that I used is there are so many subreddits and online pockets of the internet where people who, might self-report having some sort of intimate connection with AI, whether they feel like they're using AI for romance or for platonic friendship, where these folks will go and gather and be in community with each other. Really, the thing that is bringing them to talk to other humans is the role that AI plays in their life. And so, when I was scrolling one of these subreddits for the book, I was like, wow, all these people are, talking about the intimate connections they have with AI, how they're, they feel like they're having a romance with AI. And I was talking to this researcher, Dr. Kate Devlin, and I was like, doesn't that seem that they're, doesn't that seem troubling to you? And she said, no, in fact, the reason why it almost is sort of, it doesn't seem troubling to me is that when they find themselves in this emotional entanglement with AI, the first thing they want to do is tell a human about it. They want to reach out to her as a researcher to get her advice. They want to talk to other humans on platforms like Reddit about the role that AI is playing in their life. And so there are all these interesting ways that the technology seems to be about bringing people closer together to other humans, not necessarily sort of deepening whatever isolation they may be feeling already.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think that is a primary fear for a lot of people is that AI is just going to come in and take over our human connections and all of our jobs and all of the things that our society kind of currently looks like and depends on. And so I am curious if we can camp out there a little bit and this fear about AI coming in and replacing human connection and intimacy. And I know we're starting that conversation, but I mean, is that a real threat?
Well, the people who make AI, the people who profit from AI, would love for everybody listening to believe that AI is a reasonable and effective replacement for humans, whether we're talking about labor, in the workplace, whether we're talking about emotional labor, like relationships. It would really be great for them if that was the case. However, I actually am not of the mind that AI can ever replace humans in the workplace or in our intimate lives. And I think that when you listen to what folks are saying about what brings them to intimate relationships with AI, most people who use AI for some sort of intimate reason will say, oh, I'm not even looking for AI to replace my human relationship. I see the relationship that I have with AI as a totally separate thing that can never even compete with the relationship that I have with humans. And so, yeah, in working on the book, I would say, if anything, it really affirmed the power and importance, and most importantly, the irreplaceability of humans, right? Like, we are on this planet to be in connection with each other. And as much as people like Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, would like us to believe that that is not the case, it is the case. And I don't think there's ever a world where humans are actually being replaced by AI.
Why do you think that humans aren't replaceable in that way? Because I could imagine people would say, well, it can converse with me in the same way. Perhaps there's not that same sort of like physical presence that's there, but the conversation feels pretty normal. Why is that not a replacement?
Oh, what a good question. I would say there's just things there are things that are hallmarks of being in connection with other humans that AI simply cannot do, right? You can have a conversation, a back and forth with AI that feels good, that maybe even makes you feel like you're speaking to another human. But part of human relationships are things like friction, things like reciprocity. Sometimes I'm having in my human relationship, sometimes I'm having a problem and I need to text my friend a million times. Sometimes she's having a problem and she's got to text me a million times. And that's what makes our relationship work, right? And so that give and take reciprocity is something that AI simply cannot, it just can't do, right? You can ask AI, you could say hey, I want you to talk to me as if you were a friend having a problem. It's always going to be a simulation of something that I think that humans need to have when they're in relationship with each other.
Yeah, I like that distinction. I think that's where my mind was going as well. It's interesting, though, because what you're describing, that friction, feels kind of like an inconvenience. And it's more difficult. There's more risk. There's more pain involved. And so if I could find something that removes that, but gives me a lot of the benefits of companionship, why wouldn't I want to do that? But I think you're totally right that it's it's not worth it anymore. It doesn't make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I know more than anybody that sometimes being in connection with humans is challenging and inconvenient and annoying. But it really makes you step back and ask, why do we have relationships? What is the point of being in relationship with other people, right? And, it is interesting because in the book, I spoke to so many people who had deep connections with AI, whether they were romantic or platonic or emotional or whatever. And a lot of those people, the relationship they had with AI was at one point kind of hot and heavy or intense. And then it just kind of fizzled out. And when I spoke to a researcher, she said, oh, that's very commonplace because after a while, it kind of feels like a chore to maintain this completely one-sided relationship that simply cannot be reciprocal.
I think that's such an
Wow.
excellent point. And I'm a couples therapist, Bridget, and where I see this show up in like our romantic and intimate relationships as a problem is using AI in this one-sided nature to come then back to your partner and essentially prove this is why you're being unhealthy. This is why you're wrong. I put this into AI and this is gaslighting. And it drives me a little bit nuts, right? Because it's like you're only getting a part of the story here. And it's not another person discerning this. This is a robot discerning this.
I put our argument into my validation machine, and would you believe it said I'm right?
Well, I've thought about that before. Like, let's say I'm responding to an email about some contentious issue, and so what we do now, we take that, we put it into AI, and we're like, make this better, make this a little more of an airtight argument for me, and then we send it off to them, and then I kind of realized they're probably doing the same thing. They're probably taking, okay, here's what he said. What do I say back to this? Made me wonder, I'm like, hey, do we ever get to this point where it's like, hey, my AI will talk to your AI and, they'll let us know what the solution is? It's like, let's just cut out the middleman here.
Yeah, I think that we're increasingly seeing tech companies basically say that the future of AI is agents talking to agents. My AI agent will talk to your AI agent. In the world of dating, a lot of folks who run dating apps say that like, oh, the future of dating isn't humans dating humans. It's your AI agent. Even before a swipe is made, sussing out someone else's AI agent to see if there's potentially a match and them working out all of that before you even get to that. I don't happen to think I don't happen to agree that that is actually what people want, but this is what tech leaders who run dating apps are saying people want.
That's wow. That's crazy. And that's, I could see that happening actually. Cause, just recently I had what I thought was a human was actually an AI assistant reaching out to me on behalf of their client to coordinate a therapy intake. And I thought, whoa, like I had no idea. It sounded like a person. I had no clue.
Oh, it was like a phone call.
Yeah, it was a phone call that left me voicemails and then also emailed me and texted me. And I think that was the indication for me of like how fast it was happening, that maybe this isn't a human, but it was. Yeah, I could see this like maybe going, if it's already acting as an assistant, why wouldn't it be like an assistant in the dating world? Because there's so many people that feel like online dating is such a chore. Like when people, that are coming in to see me break up and then they have to get back out into the dating scene. That's constantly what I hear is it's like, it's so much work, Keila. Like I don't want to have to deal and like weed out all of these people. So that does seem like something that could happen. It's just wild because I'm like, gosh, I didn't even think of that.
Can I ask a follow-up? When you realized that the person or that the entity communicating with you was AI, what was your response? How did that make you feel?
I didn't like it. I felt like, oh, like this is like not a person. I don't want to interact with this thing. Like that, I really did feel like, what? Like confused at first and then sort of like turned off by that.
That is a commonplace reaction, right? Like I would have the same reaction. There's something that happens when you find out that you are, I don't want to use the word non-consensually, but that is what it is. When
it
you're
felt like I was being tricked. Yes.
Yeah. And like there is I don't know the word for it, but there is a thing that happens where people experience a breach of trust because you just automatically assume that you're dealing with another human, even if it's through a screen or an email.
It's kind of like a violation.
Yes. And it's just very hard to come back from that.
Right.
Yeah. I want to throw something else into the mix here because I had a similar interaction with an AI agent. I got an email that was about becoming impaneled with a new insurance company, and I was interested in it. And we were going back and forth, and Kayla, same thing. Like the speed was very quick, like how quickly my questions were getting answered. After about 7 or 8 emails, I go, "Are you AI?" And it was funny because it didn't really fully answer. It goes, "The team does use some AI tools to, work on things, blah, blah, blah." But here's kind of my punchline for this. I've had to work with insurance companies, negotiate contracts a lot as a therapist who runs a big practice. And I'll tell you to all our listeners out there, it's hell. It's horrible. It's awful. It takes 6 months. This was the greatest insurance interaction of all time that I've had. We figured it out in 24 hours. What we needed the rates to be. And we just, we exchanged 20 emails in probably 24 hours, and it was great. But that's the difference between, that's an insurance company. And so it's like, I just kind of wanted to throw that into the mix here.
I think that's a great example because I think it really gets at, I guess, the tension, which is that had that been an AI, had that been like an emotional exchange, you might have felt differently. The fact that it was just navigating a logistical thing that, could happen over the course of many weeks or months and a lot of frustrating back and forth, and that it was made simple, that's a totally different thing. And what's interesting is that I think just like 2 weeks ago, new legislation in China went into effect where when you ask an AI if you are AI has to say, like, yes, I am AI. And
that's crazy that even has to be a question, though.
1,000%.
I mean, like, it should just do it the first time. It should just be like, hi, conversation, first thing, I am AI. Like, that's crazy that you have to call its bluff. Like, wait, I think you're AI. And that there's not a law already that says it has to answer honestly.
Yeah, we in the United States do not have, there's some legislation that folks are pushing, but there is not currently any legislation that makes it so that if you ask AI, are you AI? Am I dealing with AI? That it has to answer clearly. And again, I think when it comes to transparency, any relationship, even if it's a relationship between a healthcare provider and an insurance AI bot or whatever, has to have transparency. People deserve to know who they're talking to, who's on the other end of that screen.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just the bottom line, the baseline common sense that, you should be able to have that transparency and disclosure that you're in fact interacting with AI.
Yeah. You just reminded me that mine said it had a name. It was John. John was calling me. I'm like, this is not John. Like the deception there feels wrong. It feels icky.
Because no good relationship starts from a place of deception, lack of transparency. Again, whether it's just someone reaching out to do a boring insurance thing or get an appointment on the books, nobody likes to feel like they've been deceived into having an experience that they didn't necessarily realize all the ins and outs of.
Right.
My fairness brain too is like, I am giving time and effort as a real human to engaging in, whatever I choose to say yes to or ask more about or pursue. And so I think there is this piece too, where if you don't disclose that I'm talking to AI, there is something that feels like, oh, on the other end, I'm not working with someone who's giving equal effort and time to showing up and navigating whatever this is.
Exactly. Reciprocity. And I get it. Like everybody in my world knows this about me. I hate email, right? Like there are so many things that I'm good at. Email, in my perfect world, I never have to look at another email and all the emails go out. I could set up AI agents who handle this for me, but the reason why email is a pain for me is that when I interact with someone, I want them to understand that they're important to me. I'm really thinking about the things that they're asking, even if it's just like scheduling a call or getting something on the books. I want them to know that there was effort and intention that I had to put into that. And that's why emails are hard for me. But if I just offload that onto AI, I don't know, it just gives the impression that being in relationship with others is not important to me or is not a priority. And when I get emails from people's AI agents, that's exactly how I feel, that there's not reciprocity, there's not equal energy being exchanged here.
I guess I'm like, my brain is kind of going to the devil's advocate of this. And in my situation where this assistant is reaching out to me, what I do know about my own experience in seeking therapy for myself and trying to coordinate care for therapy, and also the clients that I see, is that there are so many therapists who do not respond. And so I can, in some ways, understand why they, like the client in this case, doesn't want to, put the effort into calling around and not getting any response, or like, the insurance company are such a hassle to coordinate with that we want to try to reduce some effort and be more efficient and put, our energy into something else. But it also, I don't know, it's like that speaks to like a bigger problem, I think, and is AI the thing to actually solve that? I don't know.
Yeah, I really like how you put that, because it's something that I saw quite a bit of, where there are these real challenges and real gaps that people and professionals experience, whether it's I'm a healthcare professional and see so many clients, I'm drowning in insurance paperwork and yada, yada, yada. I don't have time to respond thoughtfully to everything, right? These very real gaps and challenges that are real and exist. Tech companies are essentially saying, we will fill that gap and challenge with our AI for profit. And so in some ways, it's good, because you're thinking, okay, well, that gap is being fixed. That's great. But I guess I wonder, wouldn't we be better off if we were able to build worlds where these real challenges and gaps did not exist? And are we accepting this Band-Aid in the form of AI and saying, oh, this is a good enough solution, when really the solution is institutional or systemic, and that's why we're sort of avoiding that solution? Does that make sense?
It does.
It actually piques one of the questions that I was most interested to ask you is, through all of this research that you've done with AI and interviewing people, did you have any views about AI that changed kind of coming out the other side of everything you found?
Absolutely. When I first started writing the book, it actually was kind of a big pain. The first about few thousand words that I wrote were before I had done any of the research, were very much about how people who experience intimacy with AI are putting themselves at great risk for personal harm and danger, how they are deepening their isolation, how it's this big problem. It was very focused on the people, the individuals who were doing this. Then I did the research and I realized the current available research does not fully support that conclusion. So I had to scrap those first few thousand words, which was a big pain with my editor, but she pushed through. And the reality is that the available research that we have right now about people who use AI for intimacy seems to suggest that for most healthy adults, using AI for intimacy is not actually opening yourself up for deep personal harm or harming others. Now, that's different when you're talking about vulnerable adults or children, but for most healthy adults, it's more or less fine. But that doesn't mean that it's without risk, because when you zoom out and stop focusing on the individual, then you look at the companies and the people who are building the AI. And in fact, the companies are actually creating the conditions for very risky scenarios and dynamics, right? There's not a lot of privacy controls when it comes to AI. Sam Altman, in interviews, he has said, I know that lots of people, particularly young people, are using ChatGPT for therapy, but I don't recommend that use case because we haven't figured out things like privacy, and there's great risk for harm there. Yet he knows this is how young people are using the technology. And so the thing that really shifted for me was stop focusing so much on the individuals and start looking at the companies and whether or not they are creating the conditions for harm, which in my opinion, they are.
I'm curious. I've heard people or heard stories about, gosh, I want to be careful, as I share all of this, because I'm probably just regurgitating headlines I saw or something, clickbait articles. But I've heard these stories about AI helping people complete suicide, or totally estranged from family members, stuff like that. Is that just sensationalism, or is that an issue that we're seeing?
It's kind of both. It is absolutely an issue that we're seeing, and I think that tech companies should be held accountable for it. We've got, there's, as far as I know, at least 10 lawsuits working their way through the courts where people say, I was in communication with ChatGPT. The very flattering, validating yes man of this AI chatbot convinced my loved one to do something harmful to themselves or others, right? So absolutely, that is a thing that happens. I don't know that I would call it sensational. It is true that those cases, if you are a healthy adult, you are unlikely to have that kind of outcome from the use of AI. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about the folks who do experience that outcome, right? Because not everybody who signs on to ChatGPT does so thinking, I am a vulnerable adult, or I have an existing mental health issue. There's even been instances where people say, hey, I never had any kind of mental health issue. I would not consider myself a vulnerable adult. I signed on to ChatGPT and asked it one question. Next thing you know, it is validating some of the worst impulses that I did not even know that I had. And so I wish that we lived in a world where things were so cut and dry, but we don't. And so I think it's kind of all of the above, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest ways that you're seeing people use AI for intimacy and like within the connection?
It really runs a range. You know, some of them are as simple as, I think Coulter brought up this example of running your email through AI to make sure that it sounds the right way that you want it to sound before you connect with somebody. Or, you know, a lot of people use it for practicing or role-playing rough conversations. If you have to have a rough conversation with a human in your life, you might go to AI to, you know, role play that before you have it. A lot of the research also suggests that people use it as a way to, you know, if you've got like a particular hobby or interest that the human in your life might not really care so much about, AI can be a place to put some of that. Like me personally, I'm going through like a whole fitness weight loss thing, and there is nothing more annoying than when one person is on like a new health kick and the other person in the relationship maybe isn't, and like maybe doesn't want to hear about what you just learned about fiber intake again. You know, it's like that kind of thing where I can still have a place to put this specific interest or hobby or habit that I want to talk about in AI, and I don't have to talk to my partner about it. All these different kinds of ways that I think that AI is showing up more in people's relationships. There was just some new reporting about how for particularly young people, AI is playing a bigger role almost as like a social or dating coach where, you know, they role play conversations and practice conversations. And again, I'm not saying that those use cases are good or bad. I guess my larger point would be just the awareness of the ways that tech companies and AI companies are increasingly involved in our intimate relationships, right? Like, you know, I think we spend a lot of time talking about whether or not this is good or bad, or if is the person like pathetic or delusional or doing something wrong, when in reality, I think the conversation needs to be, well, are we comfortable with tech companies, you know, commodifying and profiting from more and more of our intimate human experiences and connections?
I don't know where I'm falling here. I've been thinking about this idea that you brought up around like role playing or editing your conversation with somebody through AI first. And on one hand, I can see that as a resource. Like I'm trying to, you know, learn to communicate more effectively. And so I'm using this tool to try to communicate in my relationships more effectively. But then I also feel like that fraudulent thing come up again, where it's like, this doesn't feel like there's some deception to it because like you edited this first. And so I don't know. It almost feels like there's like a third party in our relationship now.
Yeah, but what's the difference between, you know, going to your therapist and doing that and then coming home and having the
Because
conversation?
Kayla, people get mad at you for that all the time too in couples therapy, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, you're translating for the partner, you're helping the partner to get in there, and then they're like, okay, but they can't do this without Kayla.
Kayla GPT over here.
I think that the
difference stands for Kayla.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the difference is, for me though, is like you see me. You know that I'm doing this. There's that hidden component to it that I think is the thing that I'm getting stuck with. Like,
well, as the AI expert on this podcast today,
I don't know about that, but sure.
No, whenever I just say the opposite of what's true sometimes. For me, I think about this stuff a lot. I've been thinking about it for, you know, more than AI, just as we've gotten more inundated with technology. I always think about like, what is the end result of this? And I like to filter things through. Is this so I can get further involved in my life in a way that is valuable, or less involved in my life? And so, you know, I just think about like, technology, it's like I could wash all of the dishes myself. I could hand wash all of them, or I can put them in this box that washes them for me. And what does that allow for me to do? And I think it can change. Like, is that so I can just go mindlessly scroll? Is it so I can spend more time with my children? And so I think about what does what's the end result of this? Is this so I can better engage in my life, so I can have an improved relationship with Kayla? Or is it so I can avoid Kayla and I can pull back from risk and vulnerability and the things that make me human? And to me, that is the biggest question that our generation will deal with, is what does it really mean to be human? And I go back and forth between doom and optimism, but I think I see a lot of people in the younger generation recognizing how important it is to engage in the things that make us human. So what do you think about all that, Bridget?
You really are the AI expert, because that is a beautiful and very helpful.
It's going to go to his head, Bridget.
Yes. We didn't warn you first. Be careful here.
No, I mean, I really like that framework of am I you? Because like I feel like it's so easy to get stuck on this idea of, is this technology, quote, good or bad? Is this use case for technology good or bad? And people don't work that way. Technology doesn't work that way. And I think we need a more useful framework. Am I using this technology so that I can be more involved in my life, or step back in my life, or be less involved in my life? And so in that regard, I think it's really like a case by case, use case by use case, person by person kind of thing. I don't think that anybody, if there's one thing I learned from reporting this book, I don't think that you can make blanket statements about AI use necessarily, because somebody might be using it because they feel like it allows them to show up better and in a more involved way in their life. And Coulter, really, I'm with you. When I first started reporting the book, I was pretty pessimistic about all of this. But in the end, if anything, it just, again, reaffirmed my belief that people want to be in relationship with other people. People want to have experiences that are, even if those experiences are mitigated through technology, they want to be able to show up in those experiences with agency and connection. And we all want and deserve that. And so, yeah, I am very optimistic that we're moving to a place where people have the agency and the tools that they need to make decisions for themselves that are going to allow for that.
All right, you guys heard it. Bridget thinks I'm smart. No, okay. I need this because these two, I say all the time on this show, how much smarter these two are than I am when it comes to therapy and relationships. So just let me have this one, okay, guys?
You've got it.
This is why we're branching out into other areas that we are not experts in.
Next guest is a basketball expert.
Oh my God. He's joking, but he has been pushing for that.
This is going to be the Coulter win hour.
Yeah. I'm still thinking kind of about what you had brought up, Kayla, because I've heard couples and individuals in my office as well. I've heard both sides of it, where I've had somebody feel offended that their partner is using AI to filter and then like deliver. Like I'm sending you a text, but I've filtered it through ChatGPT first. I've seen that be received as offensive because but it's not really you. Like you're not really putting in your effort to share your voice and organize it yourself. But I've also seen the other side of a partner who's like, I really appreciate it because they do actually suck at communication and they do need somebody who's coaching them and helping them through this. And so it just has me wondering how much that consent plays a piece, like the transparency of, do I know that this is being used in this way in my relationship? Like, are we talking about that together, or is somebody trying to be sneaky about it as though they're not using it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to what Kayla was saying about getting that call from the AI agent. I think it's all about consent and transparency. If in your relationship, hey, this person has a hard time expressing themselves, especially when they get upset, it actually is better if they lay out their thoughts using AI in a certain kind of way. Great. If somebody feels like that is cheating or feels like they're getting less of you, that's also great. But we really I think couples ought to be having conversations about this ahead of time, and there has to be transparency and honesty built into it. And I think that's kind of where we're getting off track, that folks are bringing AI into their intimate relationships where there is not consent and transparency, right? Like I'm someone who, when I'm flustered, I have a very difficult time expressing myself using words. And so I have to sit down and write out with a pen and paper what I want to say. Otherwise, it'll come out as screams or something. And, you know, the people that I'm in relationship with, they know this. They know when I get very upset, I need to sit with a piece of paper for a minute and write out how I feel. Otherwise, I don't feel like I can be accountable for the things that I say. And as long as there is understanding and transparency and respect around these things, I think it's okay. But I don't think that we're in a situation right now where that is commonplace and understood as the norm.
I don't know if this maybe like came up in your research too. I'm going to see if I can even articulate it well. One of the concerns that I've heard around AI, especially in the realm of education, is like younger generation, like they're not having to learn their own critical thinking skills, right? Like if they're being asked to write a paper and they're just having like feeding the prompt to ChatGPT or Claude or something, it's like inhibiting learning neural pathways. But I'm thinking about like in the context of relationships, if I'm trying to have AI help me figure out what I'm going to say to my partner, it still feels like I would have to be able to give some input, like it still would require me to think. I'm trying to figure out like what my question is here, or if it's clear, but it's like, is there as much of a danger if I'm using AI for relationships? Like, am I still having to do introspection, or are people like, just make it sound good and I don't want to have to give you any information about how I'm actually feeling?
I completely get what you're asking. I think it really, again, kind of depends on the person. I think that there are ways that you can use AI, just like any other tool, for introspection. You know, in the book, I talked to people who essentially said things like, oh, I use ChatGPT almost as a journal that speaks back to me, or, you know, a journal that can remember what I've said more easily than pen and paper. There are also people who are, again, to use Culture's framework, are using it as a way to sort of offload the labor of introspection onto technology. And I think there was a study that just came out, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, that people who spend a lot of time talking to AI, they like apologize less sometimes. They have a harder time sometimes admitting when they're wrong. And I think that's because we have to remember that AI, at the end of the day, is designed to be validating. And so not every impulse that you have should be validated. Some impulses should be challenged. And I think that there are people who are up for the work that AI might be able to enable them to get to that place of challenging within themselves. And there are some people who are not, right? There are some people who are just like, apologize to her for whatever it is she's mad at and make it sound like I really mean it.
Yeah, I think that just made me think about something that could be maybe like a future consequence of using AI more often. And that is in my own novelty of using this tool, I will say, like, can you please do X, Y, and Z? And like
you're
we'll
so
use
polite with
like
your AI.
use thank you. Can you do this instead as I'm editing something? And I think over time, I just say, do this, make it look like this. Like it's a little bit more like direct, demanding, harsh. It just makes me wonder then, like if this does become a tool that we use more often, does that then, change the way that we communicate with each other? I don't know.
So I say please to AI because this is so irrational, but if we're ever in a Terminator 2 situation, I want it to remember, oh, this is the woman who was always like, please.
Yeah.
So just on the off chance. But, I do think it gets at this idea that I do worry that AI, and then, living in this increasingly tech-enabled world, is creating the conditions where we kind of expect every entity that we engage with to just give us what we want without friction or challenge, right? And we can't really expect this of the humans that make up our world. But I do think that we're in this place where AI has trained us that every question that you have can be answered right away. That you should never expect an answer like, I don't know. I think that AI should be trained when it doesn't have an answer to say, I don't really know, or I can't really answer that, as opposed to making something up or hallucinating. And I think, again, we just live in a world where, almost anything that I wanted, I could summon on my phone and it would be at my door within the hour. I think that we are in a world where technology has convinced us that everything that you want can be on demand at your fingertips. But we have to really remember that that's not the case when we're in relationship with other humans. Like, we really need to remember why it is that we're in relationship with each other, what we can expect from each other, what do we want out of each other, what can we give to each other. I think these are the questions that we have to keep coming back to if we want to keep hold of our humanity as technology continues to mitigate all of our relationships with each other.
I love all of that. It's making me think, and this maybe is just like a big existential question that, of course, some kind of rapid development, like what we're seeing with technology, is going to bring up. But I love how you keep pointing back to, we need to be asking more about the systems. We need to be asking more about the institutions and the creators who are profiting from this. And I wonder, what are some maybe concrete questions that you might encourage users to think about, right? So instead of like, okay, is this morally good, or should I just not use it at all, or use it without thinking? Like, what are some of the things that you might encourage people, like, hey, really be thoughtful about these things when you decide if and how you're engaging with AI yourself?
Yeah, well, one is privacy. One of the privacy researchers that I spoke to for the book told me that you should never admit anything to AI that you would not tell your gossipy coworker or your gossipy cousin, because there really aren't a ton of rules about how what you share with AI is kept private or not. And so, as people are increasingly using AI for things like intimacy, they're talking about their most deep, dark secrets and all of that. When I come into to one of you guys' offices, you are bound by law to keep that information private. AI is not the case. That's not the case with general purpose AI bots. There are some therapy AI bot tools that might be different, but when we're talking about general purpose AI like Claude or ChatGPT, not the case. So definitely be really mindful of what you share with it. I would also say, sort of philosophically, there's this journalist that we spoke to for the book, Karen Howe, that really gave me a helpful framework of, does this use, and rather than asking like, is this AI good or bad, or is this use case good or bad, asking, does this fortify or strengthen empire, or does it not fortify or strengthen empire? And I think the real reality is that these tech companies and the people that run them, they're really building empires on the backs of all of us, on extracting more and more information, data, and increasingly intimate information and data from all of us. And they're doing it for power and for profit. And so, beyond whether or not you should run your email to your girlfriend through ChatGPT, asking if ChatGPT and OpenAI and Sam Altman and people like that are increasingly indispensable for you and your ability to communicate with the loved ones and the humans in your life, doesn't that just help them? Does that really help you live a more full life? And some people might say, hey, I'm totally comfortable with that exchange. Some people might say, no, I actually don't want the most intimate parts of my human experience going to, build the empire of tech leaders who see the intimacies of my human life as just something to be extracted.
Well, I think it's so important for every person out there right now to be imagining the future that they want, because right now, Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg are spending all of their time thinking about what they want the world to look like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And guess what? There's going to be good things that they bring about. They're obviously very brilliant people, but I will say I don't want Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg having very much influence over my life. I do not like the way that they view relationships. I do not like the way that they view the world. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg on a podcast said that in 10 years' time, he thinks that most people will have AI friends and that'll be totally normal. And so, again, I would say, like, when you look at Mark Zuckerberg, do you want the future of your friendships to be designed by somebody like Mark Zuckerberg? Maybe there's somebody out there for whom the answer is yes, but not me.
I saw this interview with him and he was talking, like, he's wearing his Meta glasses and he's talking about, in the future, like, you'll be, in a meeting and you'll get like a text message from someone and you'll be able to see it in the glasses and you'll be able to like respond to it. And the interviewer called him out. Was like, isn't that going to be incredibly distracting and like keeping people from being present? You could see Mark Zuckerberg kind of just like, does not compute. Like, I don't understand. And it's like, dude, get this guy out of the the driver's seat. because he wants you distracted. I shouldn't even say like he wants you distracted. Like he thinks that's a good idea. He thinks that's
Yeah,
a great. They think that's going to be beneficial to humanity. Take out the part of him, being some sort of tyrant. It's like, I just want more power for me and everyone to be distracted. So he thinks that's a good idea. He thinks that's cool. He
Yeah.
thinks that's smart and helpful to people. Now you can respond to people quicker.
That's a great way to put it, because I think that fundamentally, Mark Zuckerberg and I probably are not aligned on what a full, nourished, good life looks like. So it's not even about, it is about the power and the empire, but it's ultimately like, do you trust that you guys have the same understanding of what a good, full, happy life looks like? I don't think we do.
Well, and I think it's always so important for us to orient to our external locus of control and our internal locus of control. Like you have agency in your life and what you say yes to and how you want to engage with these things. And I think that as more and more people are going to have to be very conscious of how they consume and very intentional about how they engage in the world around them. I don't think humans had to do this 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, make these big decisions like, am I going to engage in this new thing that everybody is doing? It's just like, hey, they're like cooking food faster. This is great, like, so I think that's our generation, all the generations that are alive right now have some very big, fundamental, philosophical, existential questions that we will be wrestling with for a long time.
The business of being a human in 2026,
It's hard stuff.
Bridget, I'm curious about your podcast. It's called There Are No Girls on the Internet. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what the content is like on your podcast and what listeners could look forward to if they hopped over there and listened to you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the podcast is on iHeartRadio. It's called There Are No Girls on the Internet. And it's really an exploration of technology and social media, but the ways that it intersects with identity. So often we are told that when it comes to technology is colorblind or neutral or whatever. But I actually argue that, our experiences are shaped by who we are, whether we're our race, our background, where we're from, our gender, all of that. And so rather than kind of ignore that, I really want to tease out that, what are the ways that our identity shapes what it means to be online, to be in conversation around tech, to be using technology. So really it's an exploration of the intersection of identity and technology. And that might sound kind of dry, but I swear that it's not. It's very fun.
I believe you. You're very fun right now.
For sure.
I'll take it.
I also think those are very rich conversations. I led a group therapy group earlier this year. It was titled Embodiment. And we started out in our first 2 weeks just having everybody share without really any prompts beyond this one, share about all the different layers of your identity. And it was really fascinating. It was a group of all women. And just hearing some of the differences and women who had very rich awareness of the different layers of their identity versus women who actually expressed some embarrassment and shame of I don't even have any idea how to describe myself, outside of what I do. I'm actually very fascinated to think about listening into conversations about those intersections.
Yeah, we're all so interesting and layered and complex. And the idea that we would drop those complexities at the door when we show up to work or show up online or have an experience that's like a tech experience. I want to talk about the ways that those show up and make our experiences more complex and more interesting. So that's what we try to do on the podcast.
And where can people find your book, Love at First Prompt, and find you?
Well, you can find the book, Love at First Prompt, AI and the Future of Intimacy at loveatfirstprompt.ai or wherever you get your audiobooks, Spotify, Amazon, Libro, all the places. And you can find me at my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, or on Instagram at Bridget Marie in DC.
Amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, Bridget, this has been such a stimulating conversation. I'm going to take so many of these things even just for myself to kind of think about and chew on. Is there anything else that we didn't cover? Anything you want to leave listeners with? regarding AI and relationships?
This has been great. Thank you for having me. I would say I just really want to kind of underline Coulter's point about, not to make it another Coulter win, but
Great.
You read my mind.
Bridget, you speak freely. You speak freely, ma'am.
you're like, say what's on your mind.
Yeah.
No, I think the point about agency is really important. I think it can feel like we don't have agency when it comes to technology and the way that it shows up in our lives and the way that it feels like AI is everywhere. But I promise you, we all absolutely do.
Well, I think that's an amazing place to end. No,
Of course you do.
this has been really fun. This has been really fascinating. Every time we have a guest on the show, I'm just reminded of the privilege of getting to meet people from different walks of life and engaged in different topics. And it's always fun to find the center of the Venn diagram for how does an AI researcher and 3 therapists, find some common ground and what is the thing that we're working towards together. So I really love the work that you are doing. And it would really encourage our listeners to check out your book and your podcast. So, all right, Bridget, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.